Hello, I'm Janae Tibshirani with 90 at 9, brought to you by interest.co.nz. This is where you get everything you need to know in 90 seconds at 9 o'clock. The IMF warns emerging markets should brace for a rise in corporate failures as indebted firms struggle with declining growth and higher borrowing costs. Cheap borrowing saw firms in developing countries quadruple their debt to over $18 trillion in the last decade. The IMF warns emerging markets could now end up in a tight spot as their economies are weakening and the Fed is set to raise interest rates and make borrowing more costly. It says authorities need to be wary of threats this situation poses to systematically important companies, banks and other financial firms. India's central bank has cut interest rates to a 4.5-year low in an attempt to fuel economic growth and inflation. It's cut the rate by 50 basis points, which is more than expected, to 6.75%. Investors, increasingly put off by Sydney's skyrocketing property prices, are turning to Brisbane and Melbourne apartments to stock their portfolios. The Sydney Morning Herald reports rental yields are higher for apartments in Brisbane and Melbourne, as property prices haven't risen as aggressively as in Sydney. However, it reports that while remaining at a healthy 70%, auction clearance rates have started to taper off in Sydney and Melbourne. Some pundits say this might be a sign the market's starting to temper. Chinese authorities have limited the amount of money certain Chinese bank cardholders can withdraw when travelling overseas each year, as they crack down on money laundering. China's State Administration of Foreign Exchange has capped the amount Union Pay cardholders can withdraw at 100,000 yuan or 25,000 New Zealand dollars. Union Pay is a Chinese equivalent of Visa or MasterCard and is accepted by some banks here. Consumer confidence in the US has risen more than expected over the last month. The Conference Board, which is an industry group the Fed keeps a close eye on, says consumer attitudes rose to the highest level since January. Expectations for there to be inflation over the next year also rose. In New York, the US Treasury 10-year benchmark has dropped sharply again to a very low 2.05%. The US benchmark oil price is unchanged at $45 a barrel, while Brent crude is at $48 a barrel. The gold price is lower at $1,127 an ounce. The New Zealand dollar remains fairly unchanged from this time yesterday at 63.4 US cents, 90.8 Australian cents and 56.4 euro cents. The TWI is at 68.2. I'm Janae Tibshirani and that was 90 at 9, brought to you by interest.co.nz.